Good morning, this is Tom Clements with Kinger Academy. I'm going to talk to you about the fuel panel checks, first flight of the day type checks for the C90s, B90s, A90s. This particular airplane is a C90A. Most of the checks are the same for all, but there'll be minor differences here. One of the major differences is that starting with the C90A, the fuel firewall shutoff valves are no longer hot wired. For all the previous airplanes, they are hot to the hot battery bus along with the crossfeed and the two boost pumps, left and right. So for the other models, you start by closing the firewall valves, checking these hot wired items before the battery's turned on. But for the C90 and after, we have to have the battery on before the firewall valves can close. So I'm going to turn the battery switch on and then close the firewall valves. So open the guard, move the toggle switch down, give it a moment to close, and now battery back off. So we think these closed. We're going to know for sure that they were hot wire, that they did work properly. Next, I'm going to check the crossfeed by turning it switch to open and seeing if I get a crossfeed annunciator on. And I do, the yellow light up there. So that appears to be hot wired. Now I don't know yet for sure if the valve truly opened, but at least it's getting power to it. And now the boost pumps. And here we are on a ramp. There's no aircraft running up near us, so it's fairly quiet. So we should be able to hear these things run at this point. So here comes the right one. Now I hear that buzzing. And the left, I hear it. So I'll verify those are hot wired. Now for all the models, this time the battery switch does come on to allow me to check the annunciator panel. And specifically, I'm looking to see the presence of left and right fuel pressure warning lights. So the pumps are pumping, putting out pressure, we think, and yet it's not being sensed. Well, that's the verification that the fuel firewall shutoff valve is doing its job properly. It's not letting that fuel pressure come forward. So these are not leaking. Now what I'm going to do is close the guard, which will automatically open the toggle switch, and as the left firewall valve opens, we should get pressure, and the left fuel pressure light should go out. It does. And the same for the right side. Now, at this point, we basically have checked that the boost pumps are working, the firewall valves work. For most of the later airplanes, you can actually do an auto crossfeed test this time. So put the crossfeed switch in auto, turn off a boost pump, and as the pressure bleeds off, the crossfeed should open and let the pressure from the other side come to the side we turned off. So I turn it off. I had a momentary blink on of the fuel pressure light as we lost pressure. That triggered crossfeed open, and now the right pump is putting pressure out on the left side. Let's see if it works correctly the other way. Now, once the crossfeed's open, I have to move the switch to close before I go back to auto to verify it does get closed. So now I'll kill the right boost pump. We should get a momentary blink of the right fuel pressure light. There it is. Crossfeed did open, put the light back out. So I know the auto crossfeed works both ways. I'll turn crossfeed off and boost pump off. Now comment, what I just did there works pretty well as we've seen in these later airplanes. The earlier C90s and all the Bs and A90s, the pressure switch for that fuel pressure light is set at a lower pressure, 5 instead of 10 psi. And it takes forever for that pressure to bleed out of the system and get down to that value to trigger crossfeed. So that's why in those airplanes, it's pretty much mandatory to do that check after the engines are running. So the engines are taking the fuel out of the line to get that pressure to reduce quick enough to make a valid check. Last thing I want to check here, next last thing, is the transfer pumps. And I suggest doing it a bit different than the flight manual suggests, because the flight manual, you simply turn on the pump and you hit the test switch, and if a light does nothing, you're okay. Or if the light blinks, it's okay. Only if the no transfer light stays on steady is there a problem. But it's a little bit unsatisfying to do that test because sometimes no light blinks whatsoever. So I find a little more interesting way is to use two hands and hold the transfer test switch to one side, in this case the right side, while I now turn the transfer switch from off to auto. And by doing that way, I should always get a blink of the right no transfer light. So here we go. Yep, it blinks. I'll do the other way. That's for on. And I'll blink the light. Now the light for no transfer in the C90As and previous is a red light. C90Bs and after they move that to a yellow light, which probably makes more sense. It's not that critical a thing. The other comment I'll say is that the C90As and after have the auto position, whereas the previous airplanes simply have off and on. However, on really is automatic, where the pump will start pumping if the nacelle level drops, but stops pumping when the nacelle level goes up. So doing it the other way, we simply turn these on, hit the transfer test switch. Again, no light happened there at all, no light happened there at all. That tells me the pump was already pumping, was putting out pressure. And lastly, total fuel quantity is reading about 850 pounds a side. And the nacelle quantity is reading between 300 and 400, which is quite normal as it cycles to the top of the transfer pump and then goes down to about 10 gallons before it starts all over again. So there are the checks. We run them all and recommended first fly of the day or occasional checks. After that, about the only thing we're going to do here is get the boost pumps on as we start engines, and after we start engines, move the transfer switches from off to automatic. In flight, I'm going to talk to you and demonstrate something about auto crossfeed. As you've perhaps read in some of our write-ups, we are not advocates of the automatic position of crossfeed. We'd prefer you just leave that switch closed for normal flying. I hope that proves helpful for you. This has been Tom Clements for King Air Academy.